Okay, Mahinder ji, we can start. आवाज नहीं आ रहा महेंद्र भैया.
Our honorable president Shri Narendra Kumar Goyal ji to start the proceeding.
कन्वीनर साहब आपकी आवाज बहुत धीरे है.
आपको सुनाई दे रहा है?
हाँ अब बोलिए.
I request our president Shri Narendra.
हाँ अभी बेटर है.
The proceeding of this meeting.
President, please start.
Okay.
President, your voice is not audible. President.
Good afternoon, friends. We have a study circle meeting.
President, voice is not audible. It's breaking, sir. राजेश भी आप प्रेसिडेंट सर के साथ हो? हेलो राजेश भैया. Mahinder bhaiya, we can start till President join in. We'll take his inaugural address, so we can introduce the speakers.
So I welcome our both esteemed speaker, CA Aniket Talati and our own Shri.
Mahinder ji, आवाज बिल्कुल नहीं आ रही है.
मेरी आवाज नहीं आ रही है?
बिल्कुल नहीं आ रही है.
थोड़ा सर तेज कर दीजिए.
I welcome our both esteemed speaker, CA Aniket Talati and CA Ranjeet Agarwal for this our study circle meeting, and we have both the learned speaker who are ready for delivering their on their subject. Now I will read the profile of our esteemed learner speaker, CA Aniket Talati. Am I audible now?
Yes, better.
CA Aniket Talati, a man of refined thought process, quick understanding and sharp vision. CA Aniket Sunil Talati is a Central Council member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for the term 1922. Having served the profession for about a decade, he had been elected to the Ahmedabad branch for the term 1013, 1316. He was elected to the Western India Regional Council of ICI for the term 1619. He has served as the chairman of the Ahmedabad branch for the year 1415 and as secretary WIRC for the year 1718. Respected for his strong organizational skill and deep insight in the affairs of the profession, CA Aniket Talati has contributed to the cause of profession for various professional perspectives in his past role. He head the consulting vertical of his firm Talati and Talati LLP, Chartered Accountants, one of the largest firm of Gujarat. He has led engagement team of New York every year to work on top real estate developers of USA for the past decades. Being Bachelor of Commerce from Mumbai University and a rank holder from Gujarat University, Aniket further pursued Master of Commerce and Articleship with Lovelock and Lewis, network firm of PwC. Aniket has developed a unique perspective to look into the matter. He has led the cause of profession through various committees of the branch and regional council. He is the chairman of Financial Reporting Review Board, FRRB, vice chairman of CASR committee, and convener of Digital Reengineering and Learning Directorate. He is also the director of ICI Accounting Research Foundation and also a member of various other committee boards and directors, which include Accounting Standard Board, Audit Committee, Banking Financial Services, and Insurance Committee of members of practice Direct Tax, Indirect Tax, and GST, Infrastructure Development, Corporate Law and Corporate Governance, Editorial Board, Professional Development Committee, Internal Audit, Standard Board, Committee for Members in Industry and Business, Continuing Process Education, Taxation Audit Quality Review Board, Digital Accounting Assurance Board, UDIM, amongst others. Aniket Talati has recently appointed as an advisor to the Board of International Federation of Accountants. IFAS is the global organization for accountancy profession, founded in 1977. IFAC has more than 175 members and associates in more than 130 countries and jurisdictions, representing more than 3 million accountants employed in the public practice, industry and commerce, government and academy. He has served as an executive committee member of Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry and is currently member of Direct Tax Committee of GCCI, with a vision of patiently and clearly responding to the issue of image and identity of accountancy profession in the country and abroad. CA Aniket Talati has a very keen eye and understanding of the matter. With his deep insight for the affairs of profession, he has always kept the profession on priority. A man of grassroots understanding on the matters and respected for his down-to-earth approach to the issue at hand amongst his profession colleagues. CA Aniket Talati has a surpassing ability to deal with the variety of difficult situations, having an exceptional ability to bring out a range of alternative solutions on the table in any given situation. He has, to his credit, successful closure of many a task force and time-bound, non-standing group and teams. Being thoroughly conversant with the professional concern and demand of his times, Aniket has authored relevant books, including his treatise on RERA, recently published by CA Association Ahmedabad, and Accommodity by Temperament. Aniket has published numerous articles in newspaper, magazine, and professional newsletters, and delivered lectures in about 250 seminars and conferences. He also served on the board of Governing Council and Executive Committee of HL College of Commerce. Aniket Talati is also a trustee at the not-for-profit Talati Charities, which runs a reading room library for the benefit of students pursuing chartered accountancy and other professional courses. Now I request Mr. Talati to start his deliberation.
President, before that, President, I would, President, please unmute.
Yeah, I'll take a minute. Convener, sir, I'll take a minute. Thank you, Convener, for introducing Talati ji. No wonder we deserve, our Central Council leaders deserve this much of introduction, and all the qualifications which probably we can see in candidates leading our profession, all are being enjoyed by Talati ji. And friends, today he'll be taking an important session. We know as small practitioners, mostly, there have been observations by the review board that frequently errors are being observed in the tax audit reports and the financial statements. And we have two learned speakers today, both are Central Council members leading our profession. Talati ji has been introduced, and Ranjeet ji will be shortly introduced after Talati ji's session. Ranjeet ji is well known to us. We are hearing Talati ji for the first time in DTPA platform, and I hope and trust that all the participants will gain and will be enriched with his wisdom. And we should be very, very careful in whatever errors are being pointed out by Aniket ji and Ranjeet ji, and let us improvise our professional standards with the guidance. I'll not take much time. It's over to you, Aniket ji, for your deliberation, and thereafter convener will connect and read out the profile of Ranjeet ji as well, and Ranjeet ji will take the session forward. Ranjeet ji is our own. We welcome you, Aniket ji, to our DTPA.
Thank you so much.
Before Aniket start, just two line, like everybody could not listen Mahendra's all the introduction. Aniket is the youngest council member of our ICI, and since last 2 years he is heading this FRRB board. It's a very technical subject, and the kind of deliberation he had on this topic and the kind of common error and advisory we are issuing to the auditor of various financial statements, because we are like reviewing the listed company first. So it's a very, very thorough on this 2 years, Aniket, which we have seen very closely, and hats off to his knowledge. And not only that, he's also instrumental in whatever SSP you are seeing in ICI. Entire structuring, implementation of SSP, he has played a very key role. And social media also is headed by Aniket. So a lot of things he is doing in the ICI, and he is a very good addition to the council. So welcome, Aniket, in this DTPA seminar, Calcutta virtually. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ranjeet bhai. It's truly very humbling and nice to hear those words from you. And I think everybody in Kolkata, in Bengal, or in the Eastern region, or maybe now in the entire country, knows Ranjeet bhai. So, like Rajesh sir mentioned, probably will not even need an introduction, because Ranjeet bhai कहीं भी जाएंगे उनकी introduction की अभी जरूरत नहीं है. सर ने इतने initiatives institute में लिए हैं, UDIN it may be various other activities that sir is initiated. We all associate them with Ranjeet bhai, and I thank you, Ranjeet bhai, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to deliberate and share some of my views on this very important topic, like you very rightly mentioned, sir. And we have had the pleasure of Ranjeet bhai being on the board of FRRB in the prior 2 years also. this year sir is not there, but we've had his tremendous wisdom in the prior 2 years. And also, let me share with you, all dear members of Kolkata, we have some FRRG, that is groups which are functioning in the East. And some of the best performing groups are from the East of this country, from Kolkata and Orissa, and they are all being led by Ranjeet Bhai. So thank you very much, Ranjeet Bhai, once again. To the Honorable President, Rajesh ji, Mahendra ji, Shyam ji, and everybody else at DTPA, thank you very much for inviting me. And let me compliment and congratulate you for taking this important topic, because income tax, GST, इस पे तो हम बहुत सेशंस रखते हैं और जनरली अटेंडेंस भी काफी मिल जाती है, रजिस्ट्रेशन भी आता है, there is always great participation. But on topics of technical importance, sadly one has seen that not many members are willing to join, because they see that what is the benefit, or people will only point to our mistakes. But in this changed environment, like the Honorable President mentioned, and even Ranjit ji was alluding to, that we have now a very important role to play in this country and the economy. And when the things are changing at such a dynamic pace, I think it's very important for us as practitioners that हम सिर्फ क्लाइंट के फायदे की बातें जहां होती है इनकम टैक्स में या जीएसटी में, क्योंकि कैपिटल गेन का टॉपिक हो तो 200 लोग आते हैं महेंद्र जी, कैपिटल गेन कितने लोग हम में से भरते हैं, और कितना इतना बड़ा कैपिटल गेन तो कोई भरता नहीं, बट हम क्लाइंट की कैपिटल गेन बचाने के लिए काफी बार आ जाते हैं। और जो ऑडिट, जो फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स हमें बनाने हैं जिसमें हमारी साइन जाती है, उस पे शायद कम लोग आते हैं। तो आई थिंक वेरी great initiative taken by the DTPA. I must compliment once again the Honorable President and the entire team of Mahendra ji, Shyam ji, and especially Ranjeet Bhai for inviting me. Mahendra ji, if you can give me screen sharing rights, I have another login through which I have logged. So if you can please permit me screen sharing rights.
Shyam? Just a moment, sir.
If you can assign co-host rights to that account.
Sir, which account can you just repeat please once more?
Aniket ही लिखा होगा, Aniket screen.
Aniket screen, sir. Yeah, just a second. Yeah, I've done it, sir. Please check.
Okay, perfect. So yes, I have received it. I hope you can now see my screen in front of you.
Yes, sir.
Visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Visible.
Wonderful. So what has been shared today in terms of the topic, what I would like to discuss, I will take you through some very basic non-compliances in accounting standards that the board has observed over these years. I think Rajesh ji mentioned in his speech that small and medium practitioners have a huge importance that they assign to non-corporate audits. That is to say, tax audits or audits of non-corporate entities. And on this aspect, let me first and very importantly take you to this very important change that our institute has made in the council meeting held in March 2021. I don't know how many of you are aware of this change, but अभी तक जब से accounting standards India में introduce हुए हैं, there always used to be 3 levels for applicability of accounting standards. तो हम क्या करते थे, entity पे कौन से accounting standards लगेंगे, उसके लिए level 1, level 2 और level 3, 3 में हम इन्हें categorize करते थे. Now for companies, this categorization of course is now notified through the Companies Act, through the accounting rules issued under the Companies Act 2013. For non-corporate entities, that is to say for partnership firms, for proprietorship firms, for LLPs, for other entities, AOPs, etc. So all other forms of organization other than companies, इन पे accounting standards apply होते हैं. आप सबको मालूम है by now, yes, definitely होते हैं. And because as a chartered accountant, when I'm signing maybe the tax audit report or the financial statements, it is my responsibility to ensure that the accounts are made in conformity with the accounting standards. If there is a deviation from the accounting standards, then I have to qualify those accounts. तो कंपनी के लिए तो क्यों कंपलसरी है? क्योंकि कंपनीज एक्ट में नोटिफाइड है. नॉन कंपनी में इंस्टीट्यूट ने मैंडेट किए थे, उसके लिए लगते थे. और यहाँ एक बहुत बड़ा चेंज in this council year we have been able to make. Of course, the discussions started 2 years ago, and finally ASB brought the proposal to the council, which the council has approved. Why was this done? Very important for all of you in DTPA to understand. हम सबने देखा जो council members थे that compliance of accounting standards, specifically जहां बहुत छोटी entities हैं, proprietor है, partnership है, where there is an accountant, he may be even part-time accountant, maybe coming for few days in a week, few times in a month, he finalizes the accounts and brings to us for audit as the auditor of the entity. And in fact, सारा burden of compliance हम पे आ जाता है कि whether accounts are made as per accounting standards or not. If they are not, हमें ही मेहनत करनी पड़ती है उसे compliance में लाने के लिए. So to rectify that problem, to bring parity and to ensure that why entire burden should be increased of our chartered accountants, or in sub entities में हम सब जानते हैं the fee level is minuscule, it's extremely skewed, and we get a very low fees for such entities. Why then should there be so many standards applicable? Because there are no other outside users of these financials. They are primarily made only for income tax or GST purpose. So with that in mind, the institute approved, and as of 31st of March 21, institute का notification है, website पे लगा है, 31 मार्च 2021 से level 4 हो गए हैं. 4 levels were introduced instead of the erstwhile 3 levels with regards to applicability of accounting standard. और महेंद्र जी इतना बढ़िया सिस्टम किया है, it is now totally in line with the MSME definition. पहले हमारे अलग चलते थे, MSME का definition अलग चलता था. Council thought, why not make life simpler for the businessmen and for chartered accountants? And therefore, what was introduced is in the form of the revised applicability, 4 levels in line with MSME definition. So level 1 क्या है जी? Level 1 listed entities, जो banking companies है, जो बड़ी entities हैं, वो सब level 1 में आती हैं. उनमें तो सारे accounting standard लगते हैं. If the net worth is exceeding 250 crores, or if it is a listed entity, then you are all aware today it is Ind AS. Accounting standards, that is Indian GAAP नहीं लगता, Ind AS लगता है. उनके अलावा की जो entities हैं, 250 करोड़ से कम और unlisted हैं, उन पे लगते हैं accounting standards. So level 1 में हमने सारी बड़ी entities cover कर. Level 2, 3 और 4, these are absolutely parallel to the definition in MSME. So what is the definition in MSME for medium turnover of 250 crores? वही definition को हमने यहाँ continue करते हुए turnover of 250 crores कर दिया. Only change we made is in case of MSME, the definition is investment in plant and machinery. So now that is a very subjective term. So we replaced investment in plant and machinery with the term borrowings. And you will all appreciate, in fact, borrowings is a higher threshold. क्योंकि plant and machinery अगर कोई 100 करोड़ की लगाता है, तो borrowing 70 करोड़ ही होगा, 30 करोड़ equity होगी. So हमने borrowings को limit बना दी. So medium, MSME, small or micro, 250 crores turnover, 50 crores turnover. And in the last segment, instead of 2 crores, which is given by the MSME definition, it is now revised to 10 crores. हमने 2 करोड़ को भी 10 करोड़ कर दिया. Why? Because like I mentioned, this was discussed in March after the budget was presented, and the limit for tax audit was increased up to 10 crores. So we brought that in line or at par with the definition. तो now कौन सा लेवल लगेगा? आप टर्नओवर और बोरोइंग्स देखिए. और बहुत सिंपल है, 250 याद रखो, डिवाइड बाय 5 करो तो 50, डिवाइड बाय 5 करो तो 10। सो 250, 50, 10 इतना अगर टर्नओवर का लिमिट है तो लेवल 2, 3 एंड 4 उसके नीचे। और बोरोइंग्स उसी प्रकार से जाता है। सो इफ योर बोरोइंग्स आर 50, 10 or 2 crores, then your level 2, 3 and 4 entities get decided. So level 4 entity माने 10 करोड़ से कम टर्नओवर है, इसका हम साधारण तौर से ऑडिट नहीं करेंगे क्योंकि टैक्स ऑडिट तो आता नहीं। सम मेंबर्स आस्क मी के सुओ मोटो उसको ऑडिट करना है। क्लाइंट वांट्स maybe to submit to bank, maybe because there are different partners involved, their turnover is below 10 crores. Can I get a suo moto audit done? तो भैया suo moto tax audit तो आप नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि आप करोगे तो ऐसा नहीं है कि उसकी टाइम लिमिट बढ़ जाएगी। आपने 3CB 3CD इश्यू कर दिया तो टाइम लिमिट तो उसकी जो एक्ट में दी गई है उसी के हिसाब से रहेगा। बट what you can do is you can do an audit, or you can do a review or a compilation and issue a report on the financials. Lot of chartered accountants, dear friends, जहां पे उनकी clients में टर्नओवर 10 करोड़ से कम रह रहा है, बट क्लाइंट ही बोलता है कि नहीं भैया एक बार आप पूरी बैलेंस शीट आप चेक कीजिए, आप एक रिपोर्ट इश्यू करिए जो हम बैंक में भी दे पाए, जो हम आगे जाके अगर हम ऑडिटेबल आते हैं तो हमें नई ओपनिंग बैलेंस शीट नहीं बनानी, इसीलिए आप एक ओपिनियन हमें इश्यू करिए। So you can do a suo moto audit. You can use the audit report format given in SA 700, illustration 5 and do the audit. आपको ऑडिट नहीं करना भैया, जीएसटी का जमाना है, क्या बिल आ रहा है क्या हमें मालूम नहीं, तो आप रिव्यू कर सकते हैं अंडर SRE 2400। पूरे साल का रिव्यू करिए और एक रिव्यू रिपोर्ट इश्यू कर दीजिए। क्लाइंट को तो रिपोर्ट से मतलब है, बैंक को भी चाहिए कि एक चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ने वेरीफाई किया, या आप एक कंपाइलेशन का रिपोर्ट इश्यू कर सकते हैं। सो बिलो दोज एंटिटीज इट्स वेरी क्लियर। नाउ suo moto टैक्स ऑडिट करके कोई डेडलाइन नहीं बढ़ती सर, बट अगर आपके क्लाइंट में टैक्स ऑडिट 10 करोड़ से कम आ रहा है, टैक्स ऑडिट नहीं लग रहा, बट उसको suo moto ऑडिट करवाना है, तो आप SA 700 इलस्ट्रेशन 5 के हिसाब से ऑडिट कर सकते हैं। ठीक है, स्टैंडर्ड्स कौन से लगेंगे भैया, तो ये रहा आपके सामने स्क्रीन पे। लुक एट द नंबर ऑफ स्टैंडर्ड्स व्हिच इफेक्टिवली बिकम नॉट एप्लीकेबल फॉर लेवल 4 एंटिटीज। ओनली द टॉप 10 स्टैंडर्ड्स आर एप्लीकेबल इन सच। फॉर द बैलेंस they are largely becoming not applicable, or there are exemptions given with regards to the disclosure requirement. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, मैं आप सबसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि
रंजीत अग्रवाल।
यस सर। हाँ भैया।
Yes, Ranjeet bhai.
Continue.
Okay. So what I was mentioning to all the honorable participants, please be clear, from 1st of April, these definitions were changed and the notification was issued on 31st of March. So for your this year audits, these revised limits will be applicable. कौन सा स्टैंडर्ड अप्लाई होगा, बहुत बड़ी राहत दे दी है इंस्टीट्यूट ने खुद से फॉर नॉन कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज। एंड फॉर कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज अगेन, you will be happy to note that after the council approved it, in a matter of just 2 months, central government has accorded its approval and amended the accounting rules issued under the Companies Act 2013 and brought them also it at par with these definitions. So जो institute ने propose किया, as it is verbatim, government has accepted and now revised the applicability of accounting standards even in companies and brought it in line with the MSME definition. तो सबसे पहले हम कॉमन एरर्स समझे, उससे पहले समझना जरूरी है कि कौन से स्टैंडर्ड्स हमें अप्लाई होते हैं. दैट इज व्हाई आई वांटेड टू स्पेंड few minutes on this very important change that has come into force with this year. I am sure all the participants would have taken note of this. And now for your smaller entities, please see that very, very few standards are now being made applicable. इतने स्टैंडर्ड्स तो सर हम कंप्लाई कर ले। 54 अगर कोई पूछता है हम 54C 54F यूं बोलते हैं सर, अभी सिर्फ 10 स्टैंडर्ड 15 स्टैंडर्ड तो हम याद रख लें, क्योंकि वो कैपिटल गेन, वो जो बेनिफिट 115 जहां पे भी उसको होना है, आज नया पार्टनरशिप में आया तो हम तुरंत भाग जाते हैं पढ़ने को, वो सब अच्छी बातें जरूरी है, बट ये हमारे ऊपर एप्लीकेबल है। तो हम इन अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स को तो अच्छे से समझें, एटलीस्ट इन बेसिक्स को समझें, विच आर एप्लीकेबल टू द स्मॉल क्लाइंट्स विच वी आर केटरिंग टू। एंड व्हेन वी मूव फॉरवर्ड विद रंजीत भाई सेशन, इनका जब हम टैक्स ऑडिट करते हैं उसमें क्या गलतियां होती हैं वो he will highlight in terms of the 3CD reporting. So friends, I hope we are all now clear with these revised 4 levels. For level 1, all these standards are applicable. 2, 3 और 4, जैसे ही आप नीचे आते हैं, size of the company is reducing, 250 करोड़, 50 करोड़ और 10 करोड़, उस हिसाब से accounting standards applicable will also keep reducing. So having said that, let me spend a couple of minutes just to share with you what is the FRRB, क्योंकि wherever there is a session of FRRB, there is a common perception के गलतियां ही ढूंढती है, तो सर ऐसा नहीं है। FRRB का एक बहुत noble और pious intention है। It was started in the year 2002 and it is a very important wing, dear friends, which is checking the quality of financial statements. And when I say quality of financial statements, please appreciate, we at the board also realize that responsibility of preparing the financial statements is that of the management, and as auditors we are only issuing our opinion. That is why on the board of FRRB we have nominees from SEBI, from C&AG, from IRDA and CBDT. तो हम जब कोई गलती देखते हैं हम पहले उन्हें कहते हैं कि भैया ये कंपनी की मिस्टेक थी, ऑडिटर को तो ऑडिट रिपोर्ट देना है, बट प्लीज इनिशिएट एक्शन अगेंस्ट द कंपनी एज वेल. एंड यू विल बी वेरी हैप्पी टू नोट इन द FRRB it is such an independent function that even my honorable president and vice president are not on the board of FRRB. इतना independent ये FRRB function करता है. और where do we check compliance for? प्रोसेस क्या है FRRB की वेरिफिकेशन की? So please understand what the FRRB does is it selects certain companies for review on a random basis. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं डिसाइड करूंगा भैया एक महेंद्र जी की, दो श्याम जी की, तीन फलाना की कंपनियां रिव्यू कर लो, नहीं. It is totally on a random basis. Company selection happens. Then once the balance sheet is selected, there is a technical reviewer जो पूरी बैलेंस शीट को देखता है. उसके ऊपर एक ग्रुप है FRRG जो उसके ऊपर कमेंट्स और चेक करता है, और फाइनली वो बोर्ड में आती है जहां हमारे ऑफिसर्स और बोर्ड मेंबर्स मिलके हम उसको चेक करते हैं. क्या चेक करते हैं? सो वी डोंट आस्क फॉर वर्किंग पेपर्स, वी ओनली लुक एट द पब्लिश्ड एनुअल अकाउंट्स and see whether there are compliances with accounting standards, with auditing standards, that is standards in auditing, with the guidance notes which the institute has issued. For example, Schedule T2, Schedule 3 guidance note on Companies Act. अगर industry specific कोई guidance है, जैसे बंगाल में for example mining is big and institute has a mining specific guidance note where we have spoken about how depletion should be calculated. So whether you have complied with that guidance note. And based on these reviews, we look at the entire balance sheet, see if there are non-compliances, or you will not be surprised, in 90% of the cases, there are non-compliances. But ऐसा नहीं है कि हमने गलती देखी और हम member को punish करते हैं. In fact, in 15 to 20% cases only, where there is a grave non-compliance, which is impacting true and fair view of the financials, we refer these to the director discipline. पर हम director discipline को refer करने के साथ उस कंपनी को भी MCA या अगर बैंक है तो RBI और इंश्योरेंस कंपनी है तो IRDA को भी refer करते हैं कि भैया आप कंपनी पे एक्शन लीजिए पहले, then we will do on the auditors. So we take action on the auditors in these 15 to 20% cases, बट इन मेजॉरिटी केसेस हम एडवाइजरी इश्यू करते हैं कि इस स्टैंडर्ड का पालन नहीं हुआ था, ये डिस्क्लोजर ठीक से नहीं हुआ, स्टैंडर्ड ये कहता है और आपने कुछ और ट्रीटमेंट कर दी है। इन सभी एडवाइजरीज को हम कंपाइल करते हैं और उसे भेजते हैं। और क्या होगा अगर केस में ट्रू एंड फेयर व्यू इंपैक्ट कर रहा है, बहुत ज्यादा नॉन कंप्लायंसेस है, इनफैक्ट there are cases where there are 40 non compliances, still we may not refer to regulator, but बहुत ही grave non compliance है, प्रॉफिट की बैलेंस शीट थी और अगर सही से किया होता तो लॉस आ जाता। अगर ऐसे केसेस हैं then we refer the case to regulator or else we are only issuing an advisory। और ये सारी एडवाइजरीज जो हमने अभी तक इश्यू की हैं, इनमें हम ऑडिटर का नाम निकाल देते हैं, कंपनी का नाम निकाल देते हैं और एक कंपाइलेशन इश्यू करते हैं which is known as a study on compliance of financial reporting requirements। 3 पब्लिकेशंस हैं महेंद्र जी, श्याम जी, जो एफआरआरबी ने इश्यू किए हैं। मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा आप एफआरआरबी की वेबसाइट पे जाके इन्हें डाउनलोड करके सभी मेंबर्स को भेजिए। It will be an excellent value addition for them। See, वॉरेन बफे हम सब ने सुना होगा और खास अभी जब स्टॉक मार्केट 55,000 पे, सब वॉरेन बफे के फैन हैं। वॉरेन बफे क्या कहते हैं सर कि इंसान 2 तरीके से सीख सकता है। There are 2 ways to learn in your life, either you make a mistake and learn or you learn from somebody else's mistake। So we are giving you in FRRB an opportunity to learn from somebody else's mistake। हमारे ही किसी कलीग ने जो गलतियां की हैं, अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स में एप्लीकेशन में नॉन कंप्लायंस हुआ है, शेड्यूल 2 शेड्यूल 3 में नॉन कंप्लायंस हुआ है, तो उन सभी के लिए हमने एक कंपाइलेशन बना के मेंबरों को दिया है कि किसी और ने ये गलती की है, आप ये गलती मत करिए। देयर आर 3 वॉल्यूम्स ऑफ दिस which I am sure members will find useful and DTPA can circulate to all the participants। And in the last year we came out with the first ever publication, this is the 4th publication, but the very first on Ind AS framework। So for all of you who have a listed entity as a client, I would urge and request you, please look at this very important publication in which we have come out with Ind AS non-compliances also। Of course, like it was mentioned to me, the majority audience today is not dealing with Ind AS clients, but I'm just putting it across that tomorrow if any one of us gets listed entity clients, we don't make these mistakes on accounting standards। So friends, I hope so far I have been able to clarify with you A, the revised applicability of accounting standards, how they are now divided in 4 levels. The council approved it in 31st of March, so it was immediately made effective for non-corporate entities, and for corporate entities MCA in the month of June has notified these changes। So now company ho ya non-company, LLP, trust, partnership, proprietorship, AOP, BOI, cooperative society, कोई भी form of organization, accounting standards कितने अप्लाई होंगे? 4 लेवल में से कोई भी एक लेवल में वो कंपनी या एंटिटी फॉल करेगी और उसके हिसाब से हमें अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स का कंप्लायंस करना है। And we have shared with you how the threshold for these 4 levels has been decided। We also discussed about the very important working of the FRRP and the publications issued। Now let me touch upon, ladies and gentlemen, some non-compliances। I will discuss some basic non-compliances with you, which one will definitely ensure जब आप पढ़ेंगे आपको लगेगा कि हाँ मेरे वहां भी ये शायद गलती हो रही होगी। वैसे कुछ basic non-compliances मैं आपसे शेयर करूंगा because the topic for today is tax audit as well as accounting standard non-compliances। So I will restrict the discussion only to the smaller entities, that is the smaller clients that we all are serving। So AS1 ये तो हम सबको आई एम श्योर मालूम होगा क्योंकि ये काफी सदियों से हमारे बुक्स में है। What does AS1 talk about? It talks about disclosure of accounting policies। The seniors who are agree with me, there was a time when balance sheet P&L बनाई, 3CD बनाया और इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट में भेज दिया. पीछे कैश फ्लो तो भूल जाओ, नोट्स टू अकाउंट्स, अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी कुछ नहीं होता था और काम भी चल जाता था. हम 2 साल की बैलेंस शीट और P&L भी नहीं बनाते थे, एक ही साल का बनाते थे, not giving comparative information also. This was long ago, but after this AS1 and also the requirement under the 145 of the Income Tax Act, you are required to disclose accounting policy. कि भैया यूजर अगर फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट देख रहा है तो उससे तो मालूम हो कि आप रेवेन्यू किसे कहते हैं, रेवेन्यू कब बुक करते हैं. अगर टिकट एजेंट है तो टिकट बेचता है तब बुक करता है, शो खत्म होता है तब होता है. अगर स्कूल है तो सारी फीस जब कलेक्ट करते हैं तब लेते हैं या एकेडमिक ईयर पे अपोर्शन करते हैं. ये सब यूजर को कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा? जब वो अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी पढ़ेगा कि हाँ भैया इस कंपनी में रेवेन्यू इस तरह से और अलग अलग प्रकार के एक्सपेंसेस इस तरह से रिकॉग्नाइज होते हैं, एसेट्स इस तरह से होती है और लायबिलिटीज और प्रोविजंस इस तरह से होते हैं. सो very important standard with relation to compliance, because it is mandatory for all entities to discuss and disclose rather the accounting policies. Yet when we are reviewing financial statements, in a lot of cases we are seeing borrowing cost. इसकी कोई accounting policy नहीं दी है. Sir, borrowing cost is not just the cost of interest which is capitalized. Even if you are charging it to revenue, it is covered in the S16 and other borrowing cost. और अगर कैपिटलाइजेशन किया है इंटरेस्ट का तो डेफिनेटली आपको बताना है कि किस पॉलिसी के हिसाब से कैसे आपने इंटरेस्ट कैपिटलाइज किया. That has to be disclosed. Still, even today, many of us are not disclosing a policy on borrowing cost. कि कंपनी की पॉलिसी क्या है? इंटरेस्ट को हर साल P&L में ही डेबिट करेगी, हर साल कैपिटलाइज ही करेगी, या एक पर्टिकुलर प्रोपोर्शन में उसे कैपिटलाइज करती है या रेवेन्यू में डालती है. वैल्यूएशन ऑफ इन्वेंट्री, बिजनेस ट्रेडिंग का 31 मार्च को इन्वेंट्री नहीं है, ठीक है भैया, नो इन्वेंट्री एज ऑन ईयर एंड, फेयर इनफ, बट ड्यूरिंग द ईयर यू वुड हैव परचेस्ड, एट सम पॉइंट यू वुड हैव इन्वेंटराइज्ड and then you sold. You need to disclose the policy of valuation of inventory. Yet many of us are not mentioning any policy of inventory. Accounting for investment. शानदार लोग लिख देते हैं investments are valued at cost. खत्म. S13 लगता है, नहीं लगता, करंट नॉन करंट कुछ नहीं. और कुछ लोग तो बुक्स में दिखा रहे हैं इन्वेस्टमेंट, बट नो पॉलिसी इज गिवन. Similar is for employee benefits. Employee benefits AS15 was revised in 2007. 15 साल हो गए सर. पहले retirement benefits was the name of the policy, and you were expected only to say talk about retirement. Now it is employee. Employee benefits में short term benefits और long term दोनों आ गए सर. तो retirement, gratuity, leave encashment तो आएगा ही. शॉर्ट टर्म एम्प्लॉय बेनिफिट्स, सैलरीज कैसे रिकॉग्नाइज करते हैं आप? भी 12 महीने की डेबिट हो जाती है P&L में, तो वो पॉलिसी एम्प्लॉय बेनिफिट्स शॉर्ट टर्म एंड लॉन्ग टर्म, दैट हैज टू बी डिस्क्लोज्ड. एंड माय फेवरेट AS22, ये इतना बढ़िया स्टैंडर्ड है महेंद्र जी. आप किसी के भी ऑफिस में जाएंगे ना, वो बोलेगा सर लास्ट ईयर डिफर्ड टैक्स एसेट था, वो जो बंदे ने किया ना वो पागल था सर, मैंने एकदम बढ़िया से पूरा मॉड्यूल में जाके इंस्टीट्यूट के चेक किया है और ये तो DTL होना चाहिए था. और वो आर्टिकल बोलेगा सर लास्ट ईयर वाला गलत था, इस साल DTL कर दो. ठीक है भैया DTL कर दे, एंट्री लग जाएगी. उसके बाद के साल नया आर्टिकल आएगा, अरे सर वो तो गधा था, उसने डेप्रिसिएशन कंपनीज एक्ट का रेट लिया पर इनकम टैक्स का रेट गिना ही नहीं, ये तो DTA होना चाहिए. चलो भैया DTA कर दो. तो ये ऐसा स्टैंडर्ड है जो हम शायद अभी भी काफी लोग नहीं समझते, अकाउंटिंग फॉर टैक्सेस ऑन इनकम. बट सर इसके लिए भी देयर आर 2 पार्ट्स. AS22 talks about income tax, so your current tax provision and your deferred tax. You have to disclose the policy, and it is mandatory for you to create a deferred tax. डिफर्ड टैक्स एसेट या लायबिलिटी, जनरली हमारे जैसे स्मॉल एंटिटीज में वो किस में होता है, बिकॉज ऑफ डिफरेंस इन डेप्रिसिएशन या 43B के जो एक्सपेंसेस हैं, उसके अलावा जनरली देयर इज नो डिफर्ड टैक्स, बट दैट कैलकुलेशन एंड अ पॉलिसी टू दैट इफेक्ट शुड हैव टू बी डिस्क्लोज्ड. तो भले ही आर्टिकल भैया हर साल बदले, कैलकुलेशन बदले, चलिए कोई बात नहीं, बट पॉलिसी तो जरूर लिखिएगा, व्हाट इज द पॉलिसी फॉर अकाउंटिंग फॉर टैक्सेस ऑन इनकम. Similarly, impairment of assets, very important provision. If you have a client which has certain assets, the standard requires that you assess on a, that you as in the management assess every year that whether the valuation, that is the carrying value of those assets in the financial statements is appropriate. माने क्या उसमें कोई इम्पेयरमेंट की जरूरत है या नहीं. It doesn't say that only if there is impairment you give a note or policy on impairment. No sir, even if there is no impairment, you have checked machine's value in the books is 8 crore rupees. You know that future cash flow out of it will exceed this. Its market value also may be more than 8 crores. Fair enough. Your carrying value in the books will be 8 crores. But the fact that management has tested the asset for impairment on an annual basis as required by the standard, that should be mentioned, and that is the accounting policy. तो highest maximum गलतियां कहाँ होती हैं सर? डिस्क्लोजर ऑफ अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी में ही. हम सोचते हैं कि सिर्फ जो ट्रांजैक्शन हुआ इस साल में, अगर इस साल में इम्पेयरमेंट हुआ तो भैया इम्पेयरमेंट की पॉलिसी लिख, वरना मत लिख. नहीं, आप इम्पेयरमेंट के लिए टेस्टिंग करते हैं, ये फैक्ट भी आपको पॉलिसी में हर साल आना चाहिए. दैट इज व्हाई यू मस्ट हैव एन अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी फॉर ऑल दीज केसेस दैट आई एम शेयरिंग विथ यू इन फ्रंट ऑफ यू. सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू टू अंडरस्टैंड. Now I will move on. Because of the paucity of time, what I will do, Mahendra ji, is I will discuss some very basic, important non-compliances only today, rather than spending time on detailed discussion on all of these. So AS1 I shared with you. Now let me share with you on AS2 inventories. Here again, I've given you 5-6 examples which are below in the form of observations. How people are drafting accounting policy for inventories. So you will be surprised. Even today, when you look at the accounting policy for inventory, many of the balance sheets, they are mentioning inventory is valued at cost. गलत, आप सब जानते हैं. कुछ लिखते हैं इन्वेंट्री इज वैल्यूड एट कॉस्ट और मार्केट वैल्यू whichever is lower. वो भी गलत, because the term which is required to be used by the AS2 is net realizable value, and there is a difference between NRV and market value. So AS2 requirement is not just you mention lower of cost or NRV, whichever is lower. ये statement भी inappropriate. You also have to give the cost formulae. आपको basis, कौन से basis पे आपने inventory को value किया, आपको वो disclose भी करना है. It is a very, very important part. So what do I mean by that? You have to mention inventory is valued at cost or NRV, whichever is lower, and on FIFO basis, या अगर आपने weighted average measure किया है, on weighted average basis, this fact will also have to be disclosed. Even today, I can share with you in so many cases that one has reviewed or seen, especially in the smaller companies. What we do, we mention that is valued at lower of cost or NRV, and we leave it at that. We don't mention the cost formula, which is absolutely incorrect and must not be done. Now I will move on 1 minute. So yes, in front of you, you can see some of the extracts from annual reports that I have presented in front of you. Work in process is valued at raw material.
Aniket ji, I'm
Yeah.
interrupting. I think you need to reshare the screen. We are not able to see it.
You are not able to see the screen?
No, we are able to see the AS2 inventories part, the not the financials part.
Yeah. No. This is. Don't worry. I'll change it. So, if you look at it, these are the observations in the various annual reports. What has been noticed is what is mentioned is the word market value and not NRV. And in many cases, the cost formula is also not given. So here you can see incorrect disclosure of cost formula. कुछ जगह पे LIFO लिख देते हैं. As you are aware, LIFO is not permitted. So you will have to either mention how the cost of inventories is computed on weighted average basis or on FIFO basis. And again, very important for us to understand that even if you're disclosing this weighted average and FIFO basis, you will have to distinguish the categories of inventory as required for the companies. So raw material, work in progress, and finished goods, they have to be separately disclosed because that is the requirement. Yet many people are not able to comply with these. AS3, this talks about cash flows. Again, in many of the entities, it has been noticed that, for example, आपके पास कोई cooperative bank है, या there is an NBFC entity, and any increase or decrease in investments was disclosed as cash flow from operating activity, and such investments also included HTM, yani held to maturity investments. So here it's very clear. If you go through para 5.4 and 5.5 of the accounting standard 3 on cash flows, it says only cash flows arising from purchase and sale of investments which are available for sale and held for trading. माने बैंक ने security for the specific purpose of holding it for sale or held for trading करके classify किया, तो ही वो cash flow for operating activity आएगा. अगर वो HTM यानी held to maturity है, it itself suggests that you are going to hold it till the maturity, and therefore the investment should not be considered as cash flow from operating activity. It continues to form a part of cash flow from investing activity. Common error in AS3. Now I will try and restrict the discussions to some very common errors which one has noticed in specifically the non-corporate entities. So AS3, cash flows, like I mentioned, I will share the presentation with you. Some very common errors which are made specifically with regards to misclassification or wrongly classifying activities in operating and investment activity. Again, you will be surprised. Now, what happens is many people are signing the balance sheets and issuing. When they go for XBRL filing, they realize that the cash and cash equivalents, which was mentioned in the cash flow, that is the closing cash and cash equivalents, should ideally tie with the amount in the balance sheet, that is the closing cash and cash equivalents. Yet in many annual reports, one has seen the amount which is mentioned in the cash flow is different, and the amount which is appearing in the balance sheet, that is the closing balance of cash and cash equivalents, is different. और फिर जब हम XBRL फाइल करने जाते हैं, तब होता है कि अरे यार ये तो गलत हो गया, XBRL में ठीक हो जाता है, but the signed scanned balance sheet continues to have this error. So please always ensure that at least these two numbers on your cash flow and your balance sheet both internally tally and agree with each other. AS4, very small observation. Here, maybe sometimes to accommodate certain management requests or for some unknown reasons, one has seen that what is mentioned in the notes to accounts is that company has taken all significant events that occur after the balance sheet date, but before the finalization of accounts. Now, what is finalization of accounts? You cannot have such a vague timeline or a definition. The standards expectation in para 3.2 is very clear that you have to take all events up to the date of signing of the auditor's report. That is when the board approves it and when you sign the audit. तब तक अगर वो कोई adjusting event है या नहीं है, आपको उसके हिसाब से event occurring after the balance sheet date AS4 में उसका provisioning करना है. Construction contract AS7. Here again, as you are aware, I think a lot of sessions would have happened even in this study circle. How do you differentiate in a construction contract and a real estate activity? Even in the case of a real estate transaction, dear friends, there is a very clear guidance note of the institute. If you are not aware of it, I will share it with the DTP and they can further share it with all the members. It's a very clear, detailed guidance note on how revenue by real estate developers must be recognized. And when you are comparing AS7, what is generally missing is that, I'll give you one simple example, which is in the next slide in front of you. The standard under para 39 is compulsorily mandating that when you are in the construction business, you have to make these following disclosures. What are they? Aggregate amount of costs incurred and recognized up to the reporting. Yani cost kitna, revenue kitna. Amount of advances received. तो अगर आपको कोई एडवांस पैसा मिला है तो कितना मिला उसका डिस्क्लोजर अलग से दिखाना है, और अगर कोई रिटेंशन अमाउंट है, those have to be separately disclosed. This is a mandatory requirement of AS7. So in your notes, you will have to separately highlight and disclose these numbers. We move on to AS9 revenue recognition. Here again, like I said, very important, but the crux of the transactions is that your policy must be very clear. Maximum non-compliance is noticed in case of para 12. Like I gave you in this example in front of you. What has he written in the accounting policy? Revenue from sale of tickets is recognized when tickets are sold. I can give you an example. In Ahmedabad, there was this test match, India versus England. It was going on and suddenly there was a huge corona wave which hit India. And they had to eventually cancel the audience and the matches were played by the teams in empty stadiums. If you're recognizing that income in March and then in April, when the actual match is happening, it is affected by COVID and you have to refund, it is not appropriate. You have to follow what is required in the standard, and you can only book this revenue and only after the event has taken place, because risk and rewards have to be transferred. That is the crux of AS9. Similarly, if there is advertisement income, same principle applies. Here again, I have given an example. Subscription fee थी, online education services की. आपको सारी fee तो मिल गई मार्च में, but you have to provide the services, let's say, over the next 6 months. Then the period when the services are to be rendered, that has to be considered for revenue recognition. Para 7.1 of AS9 very clearly requires that. And if you have taken a subscription fee, you have to apportion it over the service period. Service period is defined in the standard. So therefore, revenue, very clear. Please look at the facts of the case. Try and look at other entities. अगर आप जिस इंडस्ट्री का काम कर रहे हैं, उसी स्पेस में अगर कोई लिस्टेड एंटिटी है, उसमें जाके देखिए वो रेवेन्यू कैसे रिकॉग्नाइज करता है. अगर आपका ट्रैवल एजेंट क्लाइंट है, तो look at larger travel agents clients and see how they are booking revenue, what notes they are giving, and try and disclose similar accounting policy and also follow that same revenue recognition principle. I think that will, in a large extent, ensure you do not make these errors and don't fall into these pitfalls of common errors, and we can avoid these non-compliances in the balance sheet. Now, very quickly, because of the shortage of time, it's already 4 p.m. We have discussed AS9. I will now directly move to, and don't worry, I will leave this presentation with you so that you can very well easily look at all these non-compliances at your ease. We will discuss borrowing cost, for example. Here, accounting policy and valuation of inventories. में क्या लिखा था? Finished goods are valued at lower of cost or NRV. Cost includes depreciation and interest and direct expenses to the point of stocking excise and details. तो भैया क्या किया? Inventory valuation में lower of cost और NRV तो कर दिया, cost में depreciation और interest भी डाल दिया. Now AS16 borrowing cost has very clear principle of what interest cost or borrowing cost can be capitalized, and to capitalize it there must be what is known as the qualifying asset. So if only there is a qualifying asset, then you can capitalize interest. If you go through AS16 and read it in conjunction with AS2, no borrowing cost, that is interest expense, can be capitalized unless the inventories are taking a substantial period of time to get ready for sale, because वो qualify ही नहीं करता है for it to get capitalized. Inventory is generally a very fast moving, it is on a repetitive basis, it takes short period of time to liquidate, and therefore it cannot in any general circumstance be a qualifying asset. Therefore, this policy of the company to capitalize interest as a part of cost in inventories is totally in non-compliance of AS16 and read with AS2. Segment reporting. Again, one very common error, very quickly I will discuss. There are, under the standards, two segments which is required. The primary segment and the secondary segment. जब हमने directors report देखी, तो directors report में लिखा है the company is experiencing phenomenal growth in the international market. The export sales are doing phenomenally well. P&L में भी आपने domestic sale, export sale लिखा. जब हम segment reporting में गए, बताया भैया कंपनी तो सिर्फ स्टील बनाती है, इसके कोई सेगमेंट ही नहीं, प्रोडक्ट में सेगमेंट नहीं, बट सेकेंडरी सेगमेंट in terms of geography in India, that is within India and outside India, those were missing, and therefore it was viewed to be clearly in non-compliance of AS17. AS18 talks about related party. Here again, some people try and just mention other parties and not disclose the relationship. It is important. अगर holding company है, fellow subsidiary है, subsidiary company है, what is the relation that has to be disclosed? You cannot simply state other related. So that is with regards to AS18. Now very quickly, two important accounting standards that I will touch upon because of the shortage of time. I will skip what is the accounting standard on EPS, and I will directly take you through AS26 on intangible assets. So, sir, to all the honorable respected members who are present here, even today, you will all see that in case of balance sheets that are being audited, on which tax audit, GST audit is done, auditor's report is issued, we are seeing preliminary expenditure, miscellaneous expenditure, or some such nomenclature which is used, pre-operative expenditure. इनमें से कोई एक टर्म यूज करते हैं और लिख देते हैं preliminary expenditure is written off over the period of 5 years. Sir, you may get deduction under the Income Tax Act for such expenditure over a period of 5 years. That is 35D of the Income Tax Act. It has nothing to do with accounting standards. AS26 very clearly defines what is an intangible asset and what can be capitalized and categorized as an intangible. Future economic outflow or benefit must flow to the organization for it to be considered as a intangible. माने अगर आपने कुछ रिसर्च डेवलपमेंट किया, आपने कोई पेटेंट किसी से परचेज किया और वो अगर आपके वहां कैपिटलाइज हो रहा है, आपने अगर कोई सॉफ्टवेयर लिया और वो सॉफ्टवेयर अगर आपने अक्वायर करके कैपिटलाइज किया, it qualifies as an intangible. You then need to give the period of amortization, which cannot exceed 10 years as per the standard. So for example, useful life is 7 years. You may amortize that intangible over 7 years or 5 years. But sir, preliminary expenditures do not have any future economic benefit flowing from them. Just because under the Income Tax Act, you are allowed that expense to be deducted or claimed as a deduction of your tax return over 5 years, doesn't mean that even in the accounting standards, when you are preparing financial statements, you write it off over a period of 5 years. They must be expensed in the year in which they are incurred. There cannot be an intangible asset created in the name of preliminary expenditure and then write it off over 5 years. AS26, ladies and gentlemen, has been in vogue for over 12 years now. Even today, in smaller, many companies, I'm seeing people just, after incorporating the company, park a big amount in the terms of the size of the balance sheet as preliminary expenditure, and then they put a note saying preliminary expenditure to be written off over a period of 5 years. So this is if I can use the word, a criminal murder of AS26 and the principles of accounting standards. You can definitely, for the income tax purposes, continue to write it off, claim it over 5 years as a deduction, but in the P&L, it must be written off. If you are regarding that as an intangible, I am sorry, it doesn't qualify as such. It doesn't meet the criteria required for capitalization under the AS26. So I hope from tomorrow, if any of you are going to prepare any financials, we stop doing those mistakes. We have to very clearly in our mind understand that Income Tax Act is different. Accounting standards are different. Your financial statements are made under the accounting standards. So you have to comply with what is given in the AS1 to AS29. For your tax purposes, there may be deductions, there may be income, etc., which may be done as per the provisions of the Income Tax Act. But the biggest problem is when we try and merge and link the two and try and find an easy way out. That is when, like I said, the murder of accounting standards happen. So I'm sure after today's session, a lot of you would have understood some of these basic non-compliances that are happening with regards to the accounting standards due to the limited amount of time. And I think we have a wonderful session coming up in terms of the common errors in tax audit. I have tried to restrain the common errors. I took the basic ones in AS2, 3, 9, 13, 16, 18, and then 26. For all others, I will be sharing my presentation with the DTPA, and I'm sure it will be useful to all of you who are attending this program. I once again would like to thank from the bottom of my heart, Ranjeet Bhai, for inviting me and all the organizers of DTPA for organizing this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aniket Bhai, for deliberating on such a wide subject and enlarging your knowledge with and sharing with us, with all the professionals regarding the revised applicability of accounting 4 level in same at par with the MSM, and nicely explaining us the funda of 4 level, more than 250, less than 250, 50 and 10 level, and applicable of accounting standard in all the 4 levels. And you have made us understand in a very simple language and a very as a layman, we have make our understand what is applicable corporate as a non-corporate. Thank you so much for delivering such in a simple language. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Now, I request Ranjeet Bhai to I request Rajesh Bhai to offer a vote of thanks.
Yeah, we can do it after Ranjit Bhai's session.
Okay. Now request Ranjeet Bhai is with us. Ranjeet Bhai.
Yes.
So
Let me share the screen.
okay.
Yes. So Thank you, Mahendraji, for inviting on this very, very important topic. DTPA President Narendraji Goyal, Rajeshji, Shyam, and all the very respected members of this association, and my good friend Aniket Talati from Ahmedabad. Very nicely, within a very short span of time, Aniket has given a glimpse of what is happening in this FRRB and how the members are reporting their financial statements and what common error they are doing. So friends, on the same line of FRRB, what Aniket told you, what is the objective of this FRRB board and how this board is working day and night to enhance the quality of the reporting by CA. On the same line, in 2018, the institute also thought that there are a lot of error in the taxation aspects also by our members. So on the line of this FRRB, the institute constituted Tax Audit Quality Review Board. So all the principle, all the structure, all the constituents are same on the line of FRRB. And here also 3-layer review is done. Once this tax audit report of a member of any listed company is picked by the board randomly basis through the software, then this report is sent to one technical reviewer impaneled with the ICI, and that will be a chartered account. After getting the technical review report from the particular CA, a group of CA, which has been constituted in every city of the India, where this 4 or 5 group of members, they review that review report and give their own comments also in addition to that. Now this review report and group report, these 2 reports are considered by the board. And this 3-layer, after deliberation of this 3-layer, then the board decide whether the common error should be intimated to the member or any advisory is required to be given to the member because the member has not made some mistakes or he has not discharged his duty the way he should discharge, or in the case of grave gross negligence and grave mistakes, the disciplinary committee is also referred in very few cases where the members are not doing their duty properly. But the whole idea of this board is again how to enhance the quality of the tax audit reporting done by members. And mind you, friends, in financial reporting, we do true and fair. But in tax audit case, we are saying true and correct. So here the limitations are very stringent, and we cannot muster any courage to make any kind of mistake. So true and correct reporting is required. So now just I would like to tell you what are the common errors which the board has found, which are done by the members at large while reporting their tax audit reporting. One of the most important or very common error is SS700. Now you are aware that our guidance note of tax audit or SS700 requirement is there. You have to, there is a reporting format is there and form 3C and 3CB there. And you are required to file this form online. And that reporting by tax auditor, our reporting has to be in line with the requirement of SS700. And moreover, since there is no specifically allocated field for providing the information as far as SS700 is concerned, most of the members which we have seen, they are commenting on SS700 in terms of notes and as an annexer. But our requirement of guidance note says, as per clause 3 or clause 5, as the case may be, you have to make your requirement of SS700 in this respective clauses. And that has to be put in the space provided while filing the online tax audit report in the space of clause 3 or 5, as the case may be. But most of the members are not mentioning this requirement of SS700, and they are just putting in some notes on accounts or their annexer as an attachment. So this we have seen in many reported, the requirement of SS700 are not complied by many members. So as far as responsibility paragraph, the auditor's responsibility, the management responsibility, all these things we have to define as per SS 700. So this point members should keep in mind. We have also seen that in most of the cases, respective responsibility of the SSC, because we as an auditor are supposed to mention our responsibility and responsibility of the SSC. Both we have to comment in clause 3 and 5, but there we don't find much reporting by the member. So this member we have to keep in mind. There is another very important requirement that whether we are also responsible for verifying the statement of the particular under 44 AB, or we have to conduct our verification in line with the guidance note on tax audit under 44 AB. So this SS 700 requirement and this guidance note requirement, and in line with our responsibility and the auditor's SSC responsibility, whatever true and correct information we have to provide in 3CA or 3CB, including 3CD, we have to be very, very careful while reporting in tax audit reporting. Then very common error the members are doing as far as section 40A3 is concerned. Here we have found that in case of many expenditures, where it is not possible to verify every payment, whether the payment has been made by account pay, check or demand draft or pay order, in those cases, we take a certificate from the SSC. We used to take the certificate from the SSC, and based on that certificate, we make a comment that it was not possible to verify the huge and large payment, whether it has been made by account pay, check or draft or pay order, that we are making our reporting. But we have found that where the reporting has been done on the basis of the certificate of the SSC, this aspect nowhere is mentioned in clause 3 or clause 5 as the case may be. Because we are not verifying as our own. We are commenting here on the basis of the certificate given by the SSC, but this aspect, these facts, this disclosure, most of the auditor are not mentioning in clause 3 and 5 of 3C or 3CB as the case may be. So this is also a very common error made by the member while reporting in the tax audit reports. On the same line, there is a provision in 269 SS and 269T, where the tax auditor should obtain the suitable certificate or representation from the SSC. To that effect, the compliance of the 269 SS and T are account pay, check and draft and all these things. On the same line, this aspect is also not disclosed in clause 3 and 5, that on the basis of the certificate received from the SSC, we are making these comments. So friends, the primary requirement of 3CA or 3CB and D, as far as guidance note of the tax audit is concerned, the chartered accountant or the auditor, whatever comments they are making, either they can verify themselves or they are making the comment on the basis of the representation or the certificate received from the SSC. So all these aspects we have to be very, very clearly mentioned in clause 3 and 5 as the case may be, because of the huge complexity of the nature of this taxation aspects we can see day in, day out. So we, and the kind of regulatory requirement on the soldier of the SSC auditor is there, we cannot afford to make these kind of mistakes. So these are, we can consider it's a common error, but it's a huge implication if something went wrong. So we have to be very, very careful while mentioning this whenever taking certificate from the SSC and not mentioning the facts in clause 3 and 5 of the 3C and 3CB. Now, another very important observation the board has seen, that there is a qualification paragraph while making or commenting on the audit report on the portal, income tax portal. So you are getting the qualification paragraph there. But we have seen that when you are mentioning their qualification paragraph there, in addition to the qualification, the other notes on accounts or other comments or other additional information are also mentioned by many members in while uploading the tax audit report on the portal. So our requirement or the guidance note requirement is very, very clear that only qualification para will contain only qualification. Any other observation or comment or any other additional information which you want to provide, that has to be not reported here. So when you are saying it's all the books of account are true and fair of the financial statement to be reported in A, B, and C under clause B of paragraph 3. So here the requirement of guidance note and the standard also that only qualification related matter should be disclosed here. Other observation and comments should not be mentioned here. That has to be kept in mind. As per and the guidance note also very specifically said that only qualification observation should be reported in this space provided in the form 3C and 3CB, while the additional information which are not in the nature of qualification should be attached as a notes and not here. So this observation by the Tax Audit Quality Review Board in many tax audit report, this kind of error are made by our members in large extent. Now coming to the 3CD, we have seen in the clause 1 of 3CD 1 that whenever you are reporting as far as the name of the SSC, and there are many branches also of that particular SSC. So the name of the branch are not mentioned along with the name of the SSC. So what the board has felt that whenever you are doing an audit of an SSC and you are mentioning the name of the SSC and there are many branches of that SSC, that name of those branches should also form part of the clause 1 of the 3CD report of the tax audit cases. Clause 2 address case also we have seen that at the time of making a report, our guidance note says that the tax audit report should contain the address as has been communicated by the SSC to the income tax department as on the date of signing of the audit report. So as on the date of the signing of the audit report, whatever address is there, that has to be communicated by the SSC to the department. But we have seen in many cases, the annual report or the address as per the MCA records are different as per the address as per PAN record. So this aspect, which is expected to be addressed with the income tax department, where MCA records address are different and our income tax are different. So this aspect also has to be clearly addressed by the auditor while making 3CD reports. One very important observation we have seen that in Caro, there are so many indirect tax payments we are commenting on Caro. But the registration number of all kind of this tax payment of various kinds of the taxes and duty. Here in the 3CD, in a clause 4, we are not mentioning the registration number of all these kinds of different taxes and where registration has been done. So if you are doing an audit of a listed corporate entity where Caro reports are there and you are doing the tax audit, so it has to be aligned. The registration number of the various taxation authority has to be aligned with the comment you have, one auditor has made in the Caro report. So there cannot be ambiguity. Caro reporting, we are making so many comments, but in the tax audit, the registration number of other taxation authorities are not mentioned. This is the very, very important, and most of the members are making mistakes in this provision clause 8. under which provision you are doing the audit as per section 44AB, wherein the books of accounts are required to be audited under any other law, what section you are choosing. So when you are doing a audit of a company where the SSC is also required to be audited under any other law, so which section we are choosing? So most of the cases we have seen that the tax auditor are choosing option A, selected for clause 44AB, where this is but the real provision of this clause is that as per the clause third proviso to section 44, it says that wherever your SSC audit is done by under any other law, then you have to choose the third proviso, not the option A or the B. And most of the member, because whenever we have seen this tax audit report, this option is missing. Most of the member are opting option A, but it has to be third proviso. But 44AB third proviso clearly say, in case of the SSC is subject to audit under any other law, then you are supposed to get your tax audit also here. So third proviso to section 44AB has to be mentioned while making comment on clause 8. Clause 10A talks about nature of business or a profession if more than one business or profession is there. Now, here we have gone through the guidance note which says the principal line of each business has to be determined and stated in this clause. Now, the principal, if you have more than one business or profession, the principal line of business has to be mentioned. But in a tax audit report, the codes of these principal line of business, of each of these principal line of business are not reported by many members. So if there are more than 2, 3, 4 principal line of business, then the codes for these businesses has to be mentioned for each principal line of business, not 1 or 2. If there are 4 principal line of business, then 4 codes of each principal line of business has to be mentioned in our tax audit report. This is also very common error where we have seen the clause 11 books of accounts are prescribed under section 44A. 44AA does not provide any books of account. 44 does not provide any books of account, neither companies yet provide any books of account. So most of the time the members are making mistakes if yes, list of books are provided. But 44AA and the company yet does not provide any kind of books of account. So accordingly, clause 11A has to be mentioned by our member. So most of the business, the tax audit report should report no under this subclause. But many times we are saying yes, and they are giving the list and all these things. But there is no such prescribed books of account under 44AA or company. So accounts are in the server or in the clouds. So which place where you will mention, because the list of books of account maintained and the address at which this books of account are mentioned, are kept, has to be mentioned as per clause 11B. So what we have seen that books of account where are maintained in the computer systems or the location of the server are not reported in case of maintenance of record in ERP based computer system or cloud based system. So this is a very tricky area. Our guidance note is also not very clear, because guidance note of Institute of Chartered Accountant of Tax Audit pertain to 2030. After that, it has not been revised. This year, it is under the revision. WI work in progress is going on. Hopefully, this may be revised in the next 1 or 2 months. But now, because of this technology, computer-based system, all these things, guidance note is also required to be revised. So accordingly, we have to mention where books of accounts are there. If it is server, cloud-based, accordingly we have to comment. These aspects are also, we have seen that list of the books of account and the nature of relevant documents examined. Now we forgot to mention many times all the relevant documents examined, like invoices, receipts, voucher, bills, secretarial, confirmation, certificates, internal, external records. All these items are also we have examined, and then we are making a comment. So our guidance note says कि while making a comment, what are the documents you have examined? So we also mention all these receipts, voucher, certificates, and all these particulars should also be mentioned by our auditor. So this aspect is also missing in most of the reports while doing the tax audit. Guidance note are very clear that reference to all such reports is also required to be made under this clauses. Now ICDS are also, we have seen very, members are not very thorough while reporting each and every ICDS. We have seen that many times those ICDS which are not applicable, they are leaving it blank. But our guidance note and the requirement says whether ICDS is applicable or not or whatever, you must mention zero or nil or not applicable. This aspect cannot be kept blank, because in the computer-based systems, if you are putting some item or some clauses blank, then the system can treat it differently. So to be very, very specific, we have to be say zero or not applicable or nil, whatever you want to make, but we cannot afford to make any clause blank. So in the case of ICDS, this observation is made by the board. Many times, many members are not disclosing the respective ICDS details, zero, blank, or comments, whatever they want to make. Now this method of valuation of stock. Now this method of valuation of stock as per AS2, our guidance note and accounting standards are very clear. But what we have seen, if there are more than 5, 7, 10 stocks, then the method of valuation for each item of the stocks are not mentioned by the auditor. So they are taking one or two line of business or whatever, and they are just keeping on this AS2, this stock cost or market value, whichever is higher, whatever. But each item of the stock, the method of valuation has to be mentioned by separately by the auditor. That aspect is missing in that various clause 14A of the 3 schedule. So member has to be very, very careful also when we are commenting on the method of valuation of closing stock, whether every item of the stock has been taken care of or not, that we have to be very careful. 145A. So 145A, it's an exclusive method now, inclusive method earlier, now the exclusive method, whether we have any deviation from the 145A or while following exclusive method, certain cases, especially in the case of the corporate, all these aspects, many reports we have found these kind of comments are not there. So we have to also very carefully 145A, whether deviations are there or not. Now land or building, this is also very, very important in the case of the land or building or both is transferred during the previous year. Now, if the consideration as per the circle rate is less, then we have to report as per section 43C or 50C. But many members, even if it is consideration is equal or more than that, they are also making a comment, which is not the requirement of this clause. The requirement of this clause says, if land or building or both is transferred and the consideration in that aspect is less than the value adopted or by any authority or a circle rate or whatever. So in the case of value is less, then we have to make a comment. If the value is more or equal, we are not supposed to make here comment. But in spite of that, many reports we have found in the case of value are equal or more than that, members are making a comment. So this clause 7 requirement is not of that thinking. They are saying if it is less, you make it comment, otherwise fine. Depreciation also a very common error the members are making, that tax audit reports, we have seen that the schedule of the depreciation as per taxation system are not tallying or not matching with the schedule of depreciation as per the financial statement. Wherever the deviations are there, we are not disclosing separately or appropriately wherever it is required. So addition, deletion, or whatever reported is requirement is there, that is not detailed way members are not reporting, and that's why it is not possible to sync our reporting in tax audit with the reporting in the financial statements in the depreciation clause. Now this item 18D. 18D talks about any addition deduction during the year with the dates in any addition of an asset, date put to use, including adjustment on account of so and so. Now what we have seen in the case of exchange fluctuations due to change of the rates of exchange, a separate column has been provided under addition in the while reporting, online reporting in the income tax portal. But that exchange fluctuations rates separate column are not filled by our member, and that has not been shown in the tax audit report uploaded on the income tax portal, but they are putting this in the annexer and which is attached to the tax audit report or physically signed report. So when this exchange fluctuation separate column is there, so we have to mention the figure, if any, on account of adjustment of exchange fluctuation for that particular column only. Not like we are making an annexer and we are attaching to the physically signed report or attachment to the tax audit report. Again, it's amount admissible under various section 32, 33, 35, all these things. Again, what we have seen that whenever these amounts were debited and shown in the tax audit report, which has been uploaded on the income tax portal, but these has not been reported in the physically signed tax audit report. So this is a very peculiar kind of thing. The members are reporting on the income tax portal while uploading the tax audit report, but they are not reporting in the physically signed tax audit report. So this anomaly in many reports we have seen, and whatever I'm mentioning here, because tax audit quality review board are reviewing only the listed company tax audit, not the small entity. I'm talking about the listed company tax audits. Here, the penal provision, you have to mention the details of the amount debited to the penal account, whether it's a capital nature, personal advertisement expenditure, and the penal provision, all these things are there. 4 or 5 heads are there. In the case of penal provision, what we have observed, that the penalty applicable or paid on the various acts, separate act, is not mentioned. Whether it's a penalty because of the income tax or a corporate law or a GST or any other law, that is not mentioned. Only we are mentioning penalty. So the penalty has to be shown separately under each act, which is the requirement of the guidance note, which we are not mentioning here. 40AI and 40AIA. Now here, many times we have seen that the reporting has been done in respect of these expenses of sundry party on a random basis. And many times we have seen that the amount which is yet to be paid, the date of the creating the amount of provision books should have been mentioned. So what we have seen here, and it's a very serious observation, we have seen that crores and crores of rupees, the provisioning is made, and the provisioning is made on the random dates. They are mentioning 31st March or 21st March or 30, all these random dates they are making a provision, and that there is no specific provisioning which has been done because amount is yet to be paid, and that's why provision is made. And the dates which they are mentioning are very random dates. So this is a very, and the amount are huge. Even 100 crore, 200 crore rupees expenditure in one of the company where turnover was 18,000 crore. So 150 crore provisioning they have made in the just 31st March provisioning is made. So what the requirement of this clause is that individual payee separately we have to mention whether it's a provisioning with the dates and all these things. Consolidated reporting is not the requirement of this clause. So consolidated dates and the consolidating amount, most of the time the members are reporting in this the way they should not be reported. So this is also very, very important, 40AI and 40AIA. Again, whenever you are making any reporting on the basis of the certificate received from the SSC, these facts, as we have discussed in the earlier clause, this fact has to be clearly mentioned in clause 3 and 5 as the case may be. Most of the time, this clause 3 and 5, the observation by the auditor are not mentioned, that we are commenting on the basis of the certificate of the SSC and not our own comments are there. Contingent liability, not provision created in the books of account, are not whenever particular liability of contingent nature is there in clause 21G, and this particular content are to be reported and not provision created in the books. So people are confusing with the contingent liability and the provision made in the books of the account. So here also many ambiguities are there, whether it's a contingent liability or a provision. So many members are confusing. So this 21G provisioning has to be also looked very seriously by our members. MSME, again, it's a MSME, the financial statements, the CARO reporting, MSME is there, but here we are not founding the interest paid to MSME. So when we are making a comment on by the auditor in the financial statements, MSME and all these payments, so the interest to the MSME, we have to be mentioned in tax audit report, and most of the reports does not mention any interest payment to MSME, which is not possible. So this clause 22 is very, very important. Related party, related person, most of the time we have seen the name and the PAN of the related persons are not reported by the many tax auditors. So where many places name is not there, many places PAN number is not there. So these aspects are not there, and many times this amount are not matching with the annual reports, financial statement. They are just mentioning consolidated figure and all these things. So this is not the requirement of this clause 23. So that's why we have pointed out in our observation that this aspect has to be carefully mentioned by the tax auditor. Now, clause 25 talks about any amount of profit chargeable to tax under section 41 and computation therefore. Now, what we have seen here, all the amounts chargeable under section 41 is to be reported here. Whether the same has been created to the P&L account or not, but whatever amount chargeable under section 41, which we have to report it. But from annual report, we have seen that most of the many expenditure are missing, and reporting is not done by the tax auditor here, but that is also there in the financial statement. So that if you align the tax audit report with the financial statements, many anomalies we have found. So that's why this common error, we can call it common error, but it's a very serious issue, whether we are reporting is true and correct. So this clause 25, we have to see. Excise duty 43B, that's fine. Senvet and all these things are there, where Senvet utilize and GST utilize, input credit, all these things, many reports that that part is missing in clause 27A, where the Sunwat utilized while some missed reporting treatment of the same in year-end account and computation. So this aspect, we have also seen many reports are lacking on this aspect. 269 SS and T, consolidated figure were reported by many auditors instead of the details figure. So many auditors in 269 SS, they are just putting the consolidated figure and then they are reporting. Whereas it has to be respective transaction with various party, individual party, detail of the party, everything has to be mentioned. That is not there in this clause 31 by many auditors. On the same line, this 269T, repayment of the fixed deposit and term loan, which are reflected in the annual report, but here the tax auditors are not mentioned. So when the annual financial statement, there is a provision, there is a payment of fixed deposit interest or term loan, and repayment is also done of the FD and the term loan. But here we are not finding the 269 payment in that regard. Here 32A talks about details of brought forward loss or depreciation allowance in the following manner to them. So now here, under which section the order is passed, the date of the order and the DIN number. Now that is the requirement, that the date of the order and the DIN number has to be mentioned while mentioning clause 32A. But these two, both the aspects are missing in many reports, where neither the date of the order is there, neither DIN number is there, which is the mandatory requirement now to be mentioned while mentioning the reference of any assessment order. So when you are talking about the section under assessment order, so and so is passed. So where is the date of order? Where is the DIN number? This aspect, two aspects are very, very important, and we have to be mentioned there. Many reports, 3CD, we have seen many clauses are blank. So our observation that not a single clause in 3CD can be blank. Either it can be yes, no, nil, zero, not applicable, whatever you want to make comment, but not a single clause can remain blank. We cannot take this kind of risk of keeping one clause blank because of this computer era and this digitalization. TDS, TCS reconciliation, we are not finding any reconciliation as per books of account of TDS, TCS, and as per the income tax. And we recommend that a reconciliation in this regard must be prepared and should be attached as a notes on accounts, because that will give a true picture of the taxation, the deduction, and the tax payment. So those auditors who are not making any reconciliation statement as per the books of account, as per the tax audit, that should be there. The figure should be matched, and this reconciliation will give a very positive outlook in the terms of those who are reading the making a order or by the assessing officer or any team. So this reconciliation is very, very required. 201 and again 206, date of payment and all these things are missing, so that has to be kept in mind. Trading of the principal item, quantity details, all these things, this has to be there. Even if we have seen that the closing stocks of goods acquired, trading is nil. The quantity details of opening, purchase and sale has to be there, because the closing stocks may be nil, but the details of opening, purchase and sale has to be mentioned there. So many reports, these kind of details are also missing. Turnover and all these things are there. Nil report, all these things are there. So what we are trying to mention here, that on average 100 reports are reviewed by the tax audit quality review board on average. Although we select 100 reports and we have a criteria, the turnover of 100 crores and more, the reports we select, and then we write to the tax auditor. They give us the report. Then it was reviewed at three stages, one by the individual reviewer groups and the board. So the quality aspects of, we have seen some large firm, big firms are also missing here, because the financial statements are very well drafted, well documented, and well reporting is done. But on the same financial statement, when the tax audit issues come, the various reports, various clauses are missing. So ultimately, the taxation aspect, the matter comes to taxation, auditors are not very clear to whether they can provide all the details or not. What was the idea of tax audit? Because when 1982-83 it was introduced, the moment it is done by the tax auditor, assessing officer will accept it as it is merit basis. Further scrutiny, nothing is required. They will accept and pass the order. But because of this complexity of this taxation system, transfer pricing and all these things, guard and all these things. So the assessing officer are also required to do the audit, scrutiny of the tax audit report. So while doing this tax audit report scrutiny, many issues are coming. And that's why this tax audit quality review board are sensitizing this information to our member. Once you have reported a tax audit report on the portal on behalf of the assessee, then the assessing officers will accept it as it is merit basis, because you are considered as an assessing officer first, and then the income tax department comes later. So all these requirements, the tax auditor has been entrusted the huge responsibility how to give all the detailed information in 3CD so that the assessing officer will accept it. But big, large company, 100 crore, 200 expenditure, they are giving randomly dates, and they are putting this figure and dates randomly. Instead of giving the individual assessee detail, individual payee details, all these details are missing. So we have to be very careful because of this e-assessment, faceless assessment era. What is the concern of the income tax audit quality review board? Because now we are on and off, we are interacting with the income tax department, and they are saying that if the reporting done by the chartered accountants are not satisfactory, or if they are making so many comments and query on the reporting made by the chartered accountant or tax auditor, then they have to come out with the various circular notification in association with the ICI. So to curb these things to a greater extent, the tax audit quality review board is now sensitizing this information. What are the common errors? What are the advisory we are issuing, so that these kind of mistakes should not be done by our member. And on average, already more than 100 reports already done by this tax audit review board so far. We have also come out last year a checklist of the tax audit report. If you give this checklist to your article or a staff, and if this checklist is filled up properly, 80% of the audit is done. 20% judgmental error, judgment and all the professional judgment you want to take as a chartered accountant, you can take. But if that checklist is completed by the staff, 80% audit is done. That was our idea, to give the small and medium practitioner that kind of checklist. So this checklist is also there on the portal. It's on soft copies there. You can download. You have a practice of documentation. By having this checklist, the SA 230 requirement of documentation, or this no color is coming, and all these things are, you have to keep ourselves all that audit documented properly. What we lack, that we don't have the proper documentation. And now we cannot take this documentation very lightly because of the regulators' requirement, the responsibility on the auditor. It's a huge, and you have to substantiate your fact with the document, your working paper and all these things. So this checklist will help you to have your working paper in order. So with these words, this was some of the small error which was reported or observed by the board for the knowledge of the member. If you have any query, Aniket is there, I'm there, we can take the query. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bhaiya. I would request the participants, if they have any query, they can raise their hand. I would like to unmute them, or they can put in the chat box if required.
Thank
any
you,
of the
Ranjit bhai, for such a wonderful deliberation, explaining all the common error we generally made in our filing form 3CD. Especially you said SS 700, reconciliation of TDS, and putting all the field made, whether it is NA, 0, nil, mandatory. We generally miss, sometimes we miss, which is the final point we should look into the future. Thank you, Ranjit, for all the things so nicely and in a very simple way. Sam, is there any query?
Right now, I don't have any query.
Okay. So means that both our speaker has elaborated all the things in such a simple way, all the queries are resolved automatically. Thank you for such a wonderful. Now I request Rajesh bhai to offer a vote of thanks to both our speakers.
Thanks, Mahendra bhai. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of DTP and myself, I thank both the speakers, CA Ranjeet Agarwal, Central Council member, and our special invitee of the association, and Mr. CA Aniket Talati, Central Council member of ICAI, for giving the wonderful deliberation. I thank all the past president, office bearer, and participants for joining the meeting. Once thanks to again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjit bhai. Thank you, Talati.
Thank you, Aniket, for sparing your time, because why Aniket timing is precious in election time, because he is now devoting time in another region. So that's very important. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anytime,
Thank you.
anytime
Thank
for you,
you.
sir. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
अनिकेत भाई, इसका क्रेडिट या कलकत्ता से भी आपको मिलेगा, डोंट वरी.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. बस
Thank you,
प्यार मिलता रहे सर आप सबका. Thank you.
हम लोग की बहुत शुभेच्छाएं और शुभकामनाएं आपके संग है.
यार तो बांटने से मिलेगा और बढ़ेगा भी.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.